Hello, everyone. Sorry about the little technical difficulties that we were facing today. And good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We're a little bit late, but today we're joined by four of our panelists, Christina Caligari from EAC, and then partners with Sea Choice. We also have Samantha Renshaw joining us from Wise. We have Myra Graham with Holdfast Newfoundland, and Samantha Young with Food1st NL for the conversation today on From Ocean to Plate, Seafood Sustainability and Accessibility. Today, we're discussing the importance of seafood sustainability, traceability, and accessibility that cover environmental, economical, and social aspects. So seafood is the most globally traded food source, and its traceability is important for food safety and knowing the standards, the recording process, and documentation of the seafood that we consume. Globally, there are issues related to illegal fishing, mislabeling. So groups like some of us here today are working to combat these issues. Some of our panelists, including myself, are joining us from the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, where the fishing industry is very prevalent. Accessibility to seafood and to all food really is very important because it would promote healthy well-being and affordability. Today, we'll find out from some of our presenters about the importance of sustainable seafood and traceability, the standards that are met with them, the labeling of seafood and these processes, the difficulties of accessibility, especially in areas like rural Newfoundland, and new innovations that are being met to combat these issues, and overall food security within the province. So, without further ado, I am pleased to present our first panelist. Christina Caligari is a Senior Marine Coordinator with Ecology Action Center and the Western Canada representative for Sea Choice, which is a partnership formed by Ecology Action Center, David Suzuki Foundation, and Living Oceans Canada. Christina, you may begin.
Thank you, Brittany. Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen. Thumbs up if we can see that okay. Great, thank you. Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for being here today. Again, my name is Christina Caligari. I'm a Senior Marine Programs Coordinator at the Ecology Action Center and team member of the partnership Sea Choice. Today, I'm going to do a pretty brief and high-level presentation highlighting some of the issues within the seafood supply chain and also speak about a few of the ways that we as EAC and Sea Choice are working to address these challenges. So I'm going to start by giving a really quick overview of our Ecology Action Center Marine team and the Sea Choice partnership. So our marine team works broadly at the local, national, and international scales towards better fisheries management, strong ocean protections, sustainable and transparent seafood supply chains, and sustainable coastal livelihoods. We work in communities and on the water with advocacy informed by science and traditional knowledge. Some of the work that we do on sustainable seafood is through our partnership called Sea Choice. Like Brittany mentioned, this is a national sustainable seafood watchdog that includes the Ecology Action Center, the David Suzuki Foundation, and Living Ocean Society. And we have a few areas of work which include assessing grocers and seafood companies' sustainability performance, pushing for stronger labeling and traceability regulations, supporting regenerative aquaculture and improving fisheries management, and also advocacy towards improving eco-certification standards. So there are a few issues facing our seafood supply chains globally and in Canada. At a really high level, oops, sorry, that should all come through, yeah. At a really high level, these include things like overfishing, bycatch of other non-target species, especially ones that are endangered, habitat destruction, climate change, unsustainable gear and farming methods, illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing, mislabeling and fraud, human rights abuses and forced labor, and a lack of transparency. So To address some of the issues around unsustainable production methods, our marine team focuses on sustainable and regenerative aquaculture. And one of the ways that we do this is through our Kelp Curious project. This is a project that is focused on bringing together people across Atlantic Canada and across all parts of the sector who are working on small regenerative kelp farming and product development as a green economic opportunity for our region. The goal of the project is to support the development of the sector, provide research, farmer training, navigating onerous regulations, changing regulations to help get more small independent farms up and running, ensuring that the right ecosystem guardrails are in place so that this can grow as a good opportunity for rural coastal communities. And through our Sea Choice partnership, one of the pieces of work that we do is to improve the issue of the lack of transparency in the seafood supply chain. As Brittany mentioned, seafood is one of the most traded commodities globally, and in Canada, we're exporting a significant amount of the seafood we produce and importing almost as much. And because these supply chains can be so complex, it makes it difficult for a consumer to make an informed decision if they are looking to purchase sustainable seafood. So, of course, if you don't know where your seafood is coming from or any information associated with that product, it can be very difficult to make that decision. And in a similar vein, even buyers have a tough time upholding their sustainability commitments, and governments also can't ensure proper data collection and management. So this was a report that we put out a number of years ago now, but it's just sort of one example how our labeling regulations are just not up to par with other countries. So here you can see this report card that we put out. Canada was given an F because per our regulations, the only required information to be put on a seafood label is the common name of the fish, or seafood, which is often not sufficient to know the exact species, and also the country of origin. This actually translates to the country of last major processing. So this means that a fish could be caught in Canada, shipped to China for processing, and then it comes back to Canada as a product of China. So what we really want to see on labels are things like the scientific name, whether it's wild and farmed, how it was harvested, and the true origin of the product. And so while there has been some voluntary uptake in better labeling in Canada, as you can see on the left image here, oftentimes we're still seeing labels that look like the one on the right, where there just is minimal information to the consumer. And traceability, which is a tool used to track information about a product along the whole supply chain, is a key solution to ensuring that products are not only properly labeled, but that we can verify that they're coming from a legal source, to verify sustainability claims, for recalls and safety, and to ensure proper data collection and record keeping. And again, Canada is lagging behind, whereas in recent years, the European Union, the United States, and Japan have all recently developed new policies or programs to improve traceability. So Sea Choice is working hard to push for better labeling and traceability in Canada. The government did promise to create some sort of boat to plate traceability program back in 2019. So we are making sure they are upholding that commitment. In the meantime, is to encourage people to look for the more detailed labels and also ask for information when you're purchasing products. The other piece of work that I wanted to mention that we do through Sea Choice is a platform called Seafood Progress. It is an online platform that daylights the sustainability commitments of major grocers and companies in Canada. But the great thing about it is that it allows people to see for themselves how these companies are performing and to make decisions about how and where you want to purchase seafood. So we profile 8 major grocers and 13 major seafood companies, as you can see there. And so with this platform, we are assessing the sustainability commitments and essentially comparing them to key performance indicators that fall under these 6 categories. So we're looking at the rigor of the public commitment. Are they collecting key data? Are they sourcing, or do they have good sourcing policies and responsible sourcing policies? Are they transparent? Do they provide enough education to their customers and their suppliers? And do they actively support improvements in the sector? So we then do all this analysis and then put it up on our website so that the public can view the results and compare and seafood companies. And then the final unique feature, which is tailored towards the public, is that we often do letter writing campaigns through the website. So you're able to very easily connect and send a letter to a grocery store or a seafood company of your choice and ask them to make improvements, which is going to further create that demand to improve seafood sustainability generally. And we do have a campaign up right now, actually, that I could perhaps put a link in the chat if that's possible. And we're head to seafoodprogress.org, where we are trying to encourage grocers to stop human rights abuses in their supply chain, given the many recent reports of these abuses through like globally, and that they're coming into our North American shelves. So if you're interested, please check it out. And that concludes my presentation. Very quick overview of just a few ways that we are tackling seafood sustainability in Canada, and I welcome any questions during the question period. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christina, for sharing all that. I think that is the perfect overview and segue into everything that we'll continue talking about today. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce our second panelist. Samantha Renshaw is the science lead for OceanWise's Fisheries and Seafood Initiative. She oversees the assessment of environmentally friendly seafood recommendations, collaborates with small-scale fishing communities, and manages the relationships with stakeholders committed to sustainable harvesting. So without further ado, Sam, can you please take away?
Thank you. I'm also going to share a few slides. So let's see if I can get this to go. Okay, are you seeing, you're just seeing my slides, not my notes, correct? Thumbs up. Sweet. Okay. So thank you for the intro. My name's Sam, one of the 2 Samanthas on this panel. So if you get us mixed up, I'm Sam R. But yeah, I'm the science lead for our fisheries and seafood team. And OceanWise is actually, for an overview, a larger ocean conservation nonprofit. We are based in Vancouver, but we are a fully remote team. So I'm actually based in Halifax myself. We work across a theory of change for our organization that is through all these different organizations you can see here. We tackle things like pollution through our plastics program and shoreline cleanups. We're educating youth to be the future of ocean conservation for tomorrow. And then, of course, our fisheries and seafood team looks at overfishing and things. But generally, the idea is for us to build a global community that takes action to protect and restore our oceans. And so our fisheries program is actually the longest running initiative under the OceanWise umbrella. We've been going for about 20 years now, originally through the Vancouver Aquarium, but we are independent as our own thing now. And what we do is try and work with everyone across the seafood supply chain, whether it be a consumer, a business, a supplier, retailer, grocery, anything that you can think of, to try and help them make us more sustainable choices about their seafood. The things that we look at include bycatch overfishing for wild capture fisheries, as well as we have a standard for aquaculture. But basically how this works is we have this nice little logo up at the top, and our system is binary. So something is either OceanWise recommended. That means that we've done our assessment, we've determined it to be a sustainable option, and businesses can put that on packaging or on menus, and consumers have a really easy signal to identify what might be a good option. And so far, we, in the last 2 decades, have been able to grow our program to almost 800 partnerships across the globe. I think we're up to 20 or so different countries with over 3,000 different locations. And that really takes credit on our partner relations side. So the mirror side of my team, I'm on the science assessment side, where we now have over 4,000 ratings for different seafood options. And I kind of teased this out before, but we have ocean-wise recommendations for both aquaculture and fisheries. And so if we're looking at a typical assessment, these are the 4 pillars that we would typically look at for wild capture fisheries. That is the health of the species, how vulnerable are they to fishing pressure, what other potential bycatch are caught alongside the main target species, what is the status of management, how effective is it, how well is it enforced, and then what is the overall impact to the ecosystem that this fishery might have. For aquaculture, we have actually 10 criteria, and we dig a little bit deeper into the weeds. So that might include what chemicals are used, what type of level of escapes are there any interactions in the ecosystem, cumulative impacts across like farm sites and things like that. So we think it's pretty comprehensive, at least from an ecological perspective. But this is, again, how we determine our recommendations or ratings. So that brings me to my, you might be, look at that, interactive. You might be wondering, okay, well, you've been saying, oops, hold on, pause this, skipping ahead. I've been saying rating or recommendation. What does that actually mean? So if you're familiar with the Monterey Bay Seafood Watch program, they are also a ratings program. We are sort of like their Canadian little brother, for lack of a better term, but they work off of a stoplight system. So green, yellow, red, and we are a binary system, like I said before. But what we do is we kind of cover the full spectrum of fisheries and aquaculture performance. So what really makes the cut in terms of what we assess is something like really popular seafoods, some things that are just, we know are either really unsustainable or maybe super sustainable. We kind of get to pick and choose what we look at and what we assess. And, we can help to identify areas for improvement, aid businesses in their choices, and work throughout all levels of the supply chain. And that is different to a certification, where you're talking about the Marine Stewardship Council or Aquaculture Stewardship Council. They have a much more narrow focus on either fisheries or aquaculture, depending on which of these players you're talking about. And they do directly engage in the industry with fishers, with farmers, and it is through a fee-for-service kind of model where the fishery or the farm would have to pay for this certification. They go through a third party. They either come out with an MSC logo or they don't. And there is a level of traceability throughout their chain of custody. So you might be thinking that doesn't seem much different, but there are really sort of these more nuanced variations in how these programs work. But really the goal is to drive continuous improvement in the seafood industry. But one of the things that makes the ratings and recommendations a little bit more interesting, at least from our perspective, is sort of how we can maneuver in the space that's a little bit more nimble, not as rigorous, not as focused on these super industrial capacity heavy fisheries, like the ones that would be able to pay for a certification, for example. So when we think about that, what that looks like is 40% of the global catch is from small scale fisheries. This supports the livelihood directly of millions of people. And many of these small scale fisheries wouldn't have the access to become certified. But with a ratings program, we can do the assessment on our own and be able to come up with a determination of the level of sustainability for some of these smaller fisheries. Christina really did a good job of touching on the traceability and the labeling issues. That directly affects our program, where our business partners might come to us and say, look, I have this product. Can you tell me if it's ocean-wise or not? And we have to say, like, well, where did it come from? How did you source this? How was it fished? And some of them are like, well, I don't know. It came to me with this on the packaging or things like that. So that is really where our program is at a disadvantage because of some of these labeling issues that Canada in particular has. But the other part of what a ratings and recommendation program is kind of tied to is data. So If there is data deficiencies, obviously they wouldn't necessarily be certified by an MSC, for example, but they could enter into a fisheries improvement project or something, for example. But for us, when I'm at my computer in Halifax and I'm looking at a fishery that might be halfway across the world, I have to depend on the data that's available to me when we are capacity limited. So how can something like a recommendation and rating program allow small scale fisheries to compete if they don't necessarily have the data that's involved? And that's kind of where we get into the more fun side of my job and the projects that we have underway, where we've recognized these limitations. We've seen the gaps in the industry and where folks want to get into the sustainable seafood conversation, but maybe just don't have the capacity. Even in this photo, these people are two people in a boat going out gillnet fishing. Like, how could they possibly enter or get recognized for sustainability if they don't have the data to back it up? So that's where we've started to turn our attention to more community-driven assessments, knowledge integration into our standard, and sort of the inclusion of some of these socioeconomic factors that contribute to the livelihoods of not just the fisheries, but the communities in general that they support. And so we have some projects going on right now in the north, working with Inuit fishers, and in BC with small scale salmon fishers. And we're really trying to get to a place where our standards can be a little bit more nimble and allow us to recognize the players that are doing things the right way, where typically they wouldn't have been before. So we've recently developed a new rapid standard where we can produce ratings year over year, where otherwise they take, potentially a year to write one assessment on its own, and then they stand for about 5 years after the fact. That certainly doesn't move with the scale that we know fisheries are changing. So how can we make this a more rapid process? And then the final thing is how can we reduce the barriers to entry for all levels of fish harvesters or businesses? There is a fee for service from us as well for using our logo, but it costs less than my Netflix subscription. So the intro into an OceanWise partnership is less than $350 for an entire year for business partners. It's scaled at the amount of partners that you have or amount of locations. But again, we're really trying to find ways that every single person could be involved in the sustainability movement should they want to. So we are always open and flexible to discussions around that. And that kind of leads me into the last piece that I'll talk about, where we have our existing partners. So this is relevant for you folks in Newfoundland, but we have a seafood search, and I'll pop the links into the chat as soon as my screen is not chaotic with my slides. But we do have a website where you can go and you can look at all the existing locations, as well as on that website, there is the partner application form. So you can either send us an email at seafood@ocean.org. You can also email myself directly, and I can put you in contact depending on your wants and needs with the right person. But it really is as simple as just reaching out to us and saying, hey, how can I get involved? And I'm sure we can find a spot for anyone that's interested in learning more or wanting to be a partner or a fish harvester that has, good ideas to show us how they think the future of sustainable seafood can look like from a community-driven or fishery-driven standpoint. But yeah, that's it for me, and I will take questions also whenever we open that up later on.
Thank you so much, Sam, for that presentation. I like the comparison that you did between being less than a Netflix subscription, because that makes it a bit more relatable to everyone as well, when you realize that it's not that costly to join, and you're joining instead of from a personal standpoint, a business standpoint as well. So if you can afford Netflix and you're as an individual, who's to say your business cannot, right? So our next panelist is Jason Murphy, who is joining us from Shorefast. Jason is an entrepreneur, artist, and food system manager who specializes in social enterprises revolving around food justice and holistic food system practices. He works with Project Eats, a nonprofit organization that spans 6 urban farms and 3 boroughs in New York City, where he transforms locally grown produce into prepared foods to be sold at market and distributed for free within communities in need. This is a nice segue from Samantha's one, because Jason joins us also from Fogo Island Inn, which is a OceanWise certified restaurant.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yes, I am Jason Murphy. I am the Director of Foodways at Shorefast, located on Fogo Island, I run a restaurant here as part of my job called Storehouse and an ice cream shop called Growlers, and work very closely with the Fogo Island Inn and their chefs, which, as was just pointed out, is a Ocean Wise certified restaurant. And we also have a business here called Fogo Island Fish, which is where we are selling handline cod across Eastern Canada, and all of our fish that we sell is Ocean Wise recommended. So these are all social enterprises also. And then going into, this is my first panel. I'm relatively new to Shorefast, so I don't have slides, as you probably have already figured out. But yes, prior to coming here, I was living in NYC, New York City, working with Project Eats, small urban farms in communities where food access was limited, where it wasn't that easy to go buy like a fresh bunch of collard greens. And through that work, where I was the production manager, we opened a restaurant in New York City where we were actually growing the food we sold at the restaurant on the roof, which was quite amazing. And we were also able to run a soup truck during COVID as part of that project, where we're actually able to take the things that we grew, turn them into recipes, soups and stews, and then bring them to communities where people were in need of food. Prior, I was co-owner of a restaurant in Detroit for 10 years, where I started as a dishwasher while still in high school. It was a triple bottom line business and also a wholesale soup business. So as you know a little bit more about me, I'm going to go in now and start talking about Shorefast. So what is Shorefast? At Shorefast, we unleash the power of place for local communities to thrive in the global economy. Through on-the-ground practice, research, and collaboration, we promote sustainable models for community economic development that serve the full ecosystem of life. As a social enterprise that brings together world-class community businesses, programming, and initiatives, we are proudly many things. Our work aims to affect long-term, meaningful change through a holistic approach. And so the next question is, where does the name come from? Which I think connects very well to our conversation today. A shorefast is a line of cable or chain attached from land to an object in water. Traditionally, it would have been a cod trap, but it could be anything that attaches the land to the water. A shorefast is only truly meaningful when we focus on what it is actively doing, its action, its effect, and the condition it creates. It holds on to the shore while reaching out to all the richness, sustenance, and opportunity that exists beyond in the ocean. And so I guess I would like to sort of talk about what place and community means to us here at Shorefast. We think very deeply about the power of place. And we also spend a lot of time thinking about how to center our fishery and sustainability work. When we talk about place, we are talking about a complex relationship of elements that make up the wholeness of life. Place connects us with nature. Our ecosystem is made up of many local places, each holding their own natural assets. Culture is a human response to place. This helps shape local communities, relationships, and knowledge. These are the notions that anchor our beliefs and our work. And some of the challenges that we do face here, and just a little background, Fogo Island is as some of you probably know, is a community that was almost relocated before the moratorium, but the people here actually came together and were able to save their fishery by forming an island-wide co-op of about 5,000 people, many fishermen, and that co-op still exists today, and it's a very thriving fishery. And as an example, at Shorefast or at Storehouse, the restaurant that I run, when I look out the window, I can not only see the plant where the fish is processed, but I can actually see the fishermen pulling the lobsters out of the water that we might at some point purchase. And it's a very unique position to be in. And we certainly understand, as it relates to this conversation, not everyone is so fortunate. But that said, back to some of the challenges that do face us. Our global economic systems ignore the people and places they should serve. The problems we face in both our communities and at the environment and in the environment are rooted in how these systems are organized. At Shorefast, our work centers around one complex but critical question. How can we create an economy in service of nature and culture, in service of place? We believe part of the answer lies in grounding economies in the place where people live, local communities. Our biggest ambition is probably to transform our global economic systems to be service of place, nature, and culture, people, and planet. And which leads me into one of our businesses, which I already touched on, which is our Fogo Island Fish. And we started this business because we wanted to operate a local community business that serves the nature and culture of Fogo Island and inspire a broader ripple effect in business practices. So what is Fogo Island Fish and what are our goals? It's very simply a business and brand under Shorefast that promotes handline cod and select seafood from the waters around Fogo Island, Newfoundland. Again, at Storehouse and at the Fogo Island Inn, all of the fish that we serve on our menus comes from that location. We believe consuming Canadian fish and seafood helps reduce carbon emissions and supports the local economy. Our products are sold to quality restaurants and fine dining partners in Ontario and other parts of Canada, both direct and through wholesalers. Our local partner is the Fogo Island Fish Cooperative and the local fishers. We promote handline practice for cod fishing, which ensures zero bycatch, making it an ocean-wise recommended product for sustainability and ethical sourcing. The revenue is reinvested into the community through programs and initiatives that promote the economic and cultural resilience of Fogo Island. And now a little more information on Storehouse, which is another one of our community businesses, as I mentioned. What we want people to feel, that's the most important thing when they come in. We want them to feel that the food is familiar to Fogo Islanders, yet feels special and new. We want to also promote to our visitors a new regional cuisine based on food and innovation in our place. The restaurant helps our customers connect with our local community sustainable food waste practices, both fishing and foraging. We also aim to discover new produce that can be grown right here on Fogo Island and become part of our future foodways. By eating here, people are supporting local food production on Fogo Island, broadening local markets, and tethering capital within our community. All of our community business are part of a larger foodways program. The goal of this program is to rethink Fogo Island's food systems. We want to help support physical, ecological, and economic health. We believe that foodways promotes environmentally sustainable methods of food production, supports the health of our community members, deepens a sense of belonging for the community, lessens our reliance on industrialized food, which in turn helps us eat less processed foods. Some of the keys to foodways is to make connection between what we eat and climate change. We are working to promote environmentally friendly harvesting methods. We recognize the Fogo Island community for their skills and local knowledge of growing and food production and celebrate them to help deepen community connection. We're committed to finding solutions at the community level through activations focused on relationships between food, the economy, and each other. We believe this holistic approach has the potential to influence greater change. Some of our foodways programs that I'll just go over briefly include community food circles, foodways residencies, international events, food on the edge, climavore, storehouse work events, sustainable practices, pickling, how to make a charcuterie board from produce and cheeses all bought from the local grocery store, and then guest speakers, both at Storehouse and in the school here on the island. And with that, that's all I have. I am really happy to be here. I'm looking forward to learning more about the community and also welcome questions when we get to that aspect of the panel. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Jason. You sure you haven't been around for a while? Because you seem like a seasoned pro at this point with the way you just talked about all that.
Oh, wow. That's very nice. Thank you.
No problem. No, it's very interesting to hear your perspective as well, because not only are you just new into this role, as you've mentioned, but it's nice to see how an area, specifically one like Fogo Island, which is a bit rural in Newfoundland, adheres to all these environmental and cultural commitments. And it's nice to see a business do that. It's just showcasing that like anything is possible if you have that mindset to go forward. So thank you so much for that. It was very, very interesting. Our next panelist is Maya Graham. She is part of Holdfast Newfoundland's seaweed work, and she's working towards growing Newfoundland and Labrador's seaweed economy. So this is just another innovative way of how the province is coming for sustainable seafood, but as well as accessibility of also different products. So Myra, would you like to go ahead now?
Sure, I'll share screen if I can. Can you guys see that? Thumbs up if you can. Okay, awesome. So yeah, my name is Myra. I'm with Holdfast. I'm part of their small skeleton crew. We're about 4 or 5 people now. And yeah, our goal is to grow Newfoundland seaweed industry, because just casually going into bays and all that, you can see that it grows quite readily. And so we wanted to have a more like predictable and marketable way of developing an actual seaweed farm industry, because we know it already grows there quite well, so why not help it along? So our mission is to contribute to a healthier and more sustainable Newfoundland. Since the collapse of the cod fishery, like there has been a lot of infrastructure that's just been left over that could be converted for seaweed related activities. So we want to use the knowledge that's already in the province with production and processing of seafood, but for seaweed. So we started out about 2-3 years ago, thinking and reading about seaweed, and eventually we launched our seaweed farm in 6 places to see which place grew best, and we settled on St. Mary's Bay, which is this one. And so that's where it's been growing now for the past 2 years, and we're hoping to harvest in 2 weeks. So right now in the water, we got 5 80-meter lines, and this is sugar kelp that we're growing. It's a great crop because it's easy to grow. You don't need to fertilize it or maintain it on a weekly or even monthly basis. It goes in the water in December, January, and it's coming out in June. I think we've checked the lines once or twice within that time frame, but the 2 big activities are planting in the winter and harvesting in the spring, summer. So we rely on local fishermen about 3 or 4 times a year to take us out and help using their navigation know-how and harvesting. And we use labs at Marine Institute, which is out of Memorial University of Newfoundland, to actually grow the seeded lines. So those like ropes that have the seaweed growing on them for outplanting. So it's like a multi-pronged collaboration between academia, local fishermen, and then our scrappy little startup. So there's multiple uses for seaweed. We fell in love with it because we started reading about all the different ways that seaweed can contribute to a healthy and sustainable ocean. So seaweed can sequester carbon, it can provide habitat, which can then increase productivity of fisheries. It can filter water, it can be food, it could go into the pharmaceutical industry. The list is endless. I think I tried to list as many as I could there. Okay, yeah, shoreline protection, biofuel, biofertilizer, and then most importantly for Newfoundland jobs. It's no secret that a lot of Newfoundlanders have to go out of the province to find work. And so we see this as a way of keeping Newfoundlanders home and putting that maritime knowledge to use, because people want to be on the water. They want to, still continue those kinds of activities. So we see seaweed farming as a way to do that as well. So we have so much coastline in Newfoundland, and we already know that it grows like crazy. There's a lot of rural fishing communities that have the skill, the knowledge, the workforce, and even the infrastructure, which, in some places is just laying kind of dormant a lot of the year or completely. And so by investing in kind of cleaning those up, retrofitting them, we could kind of also save on building costs and and stuff like that as well. So we're hoping to partner with more municipalities to kind of get these plans in place. So seaweed farming is also a way that we see as regenerative to the ocean. So instead of just always extracting food resources, seaweed actually has benefits to the ocean, such as carbon sequestration. It provides ecosystem services like water filtration and habitat for young juveniles to hide in, which helps with recruitment overall. It can create biostimulants for land agriculture, which then means less nasty fertilizers in the waterways afterwards. And it can also provide social economic benefits where our dream is that eventually, you know, seaweed farming will replace the need to have big oil rigs out in the ocean. But that's a huge pipe dream. So yeah, there's a growing demand for more sustainable agriculture as well as aquaculture. And one of the products we want to launch this year is a biostimulant made from the seaweed, which just means fermenting the seaweed, taking the juice, putting it in a bottle, and that goes over crops. And so we're doing market research to see how much crop yields increase based on biostimulant use this year as well, so that then we have those figures to market. Our biggest issue so far has been licensing. And so we're trying to get commercial licensing, which is a new thing in Newfoundland and in Canada generally, relatively new compared to, you know, other fisheries and aquaculture. So we are hoping to finally have our first commercial permit by September, because until that point, we aren't allowed to sell any of the seaweed products that we make. So far, it's all just been research and testing for the chemical and lipid properties. But yeah, starting this fall, hopefully we'll be able to actually start selling products, mostly in the biostimulant and bioplastics realm, just because it takes a little more time to have food certification for products like that. So in order for kind of these products to work, they need to be cost effective. And it's going to take a huge investment, we think, with the help of government to get something like a seaweed industry launched in the province. As a small company of like 5 employees, we can't really take charge of all of that. So we're working with all these partners at the provincial and federal level to try and harmonize regulations so that it's not as complicated to go running after all these different groups, but also to have like a streamlined process to actually have seaweed aquaculture be something that can be done by small teams in the province. So there's one person missing in here. His name is Nick, but our CEO is Michael. He's the one that jumped all this up. We have Dean on the business and planning side of things. You guys have heard me talk. My name is Myra. And then we have McKaylee, who's working on bioplastics and green chemistry with our seaweed. We're also partnered with, oh, well, anyways, that's the end of my slides, but we're also partnered with Coastal Carbon. We're using satellites to map out how much carbon our seaweed farms are actually capturing as a pilot project to develop blue carbon credits for things like seaweed farms, which could be an added revenue stream for farmers. And we're also working with BioLabMate, who are creating bioplastics from our seaweed starting this fall. So yeah, that's all I have. Thank you. And yeah, look forward to chatting.
Thank you so much, Myra, for that. It's nice to see all the innovative ways you guys are hoping to use seaweed there. I know that we do some work with seaweed in Kelp ourselves and at Ecology Action Center, but it's so nice, and I'm very excited to see the progress of this, how this progresses in the province of Newfoundland. It's definitely something that is new, and I mean, you might just be able to start something and hopefully continue.
Hopefully, anyone who wants to grow seaweed, yeah, reach out or has ideas.
Sure. Feel free to pop your information into the chat as well for everyone to say, in case anyone wants to get a hold of you as well.
Definitely, thanks.
Okay, perfect. And last but not least, I am happy to welcome Samantha Young. She is a community food animator at Food First NL. She's working to connect and educate people through food and food insecurity initiatives. within the province, especially on the western side of Newfoundland and Labrador. She runs online farmers markets at the Western Food Hub in Corner Brook.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm really excited to be here, and it's really fantastic when an organization like ours gets to be a part of the conversations that are happening around fisheries and seafood and things like that, where it's still something that's deeply connected with what we're doing. I'm not going to do a full slideshow, but I'll just sort of give you guys a little rundown about Food First as a whole, what we're doing specifically through the Western NL Food Hub and how a lot of our other initiatives might also connect. Just some of the things that are on our plate, as we always like to say. But the Food First NL is a province-wide not-for-profit that focuses on a vision of having a province where everybody can eat with dignity and joy. And so that takes into account the want and needs for culturally significant food, financially accessible food, and locally available food. So all of these things come together to kind of integrate what dignity and joy means for each individual in the province. And we do this through our mission, which is advancing the right to food. So that means being able to get food shouldn't be up to anybody, and it should be available and accessible to all. And that's what we really focus on. We do that through a lot of different things, such as our advocacy. We organize with other organizations and partnerships. We do a lot of our own action taking. We have social enterprise, such as the Western NL Food Hub, that we make a lot of sort of community connections through, and I'll go a little bit more into in depth into that later. And we really focus on valuing people. So as an organization, we focus a lot on the value of the people that we work with, the value of the people that we partner with, and the value of everybody that deserves food. Integrating the importance of people first mindsets is something that we really take into account in all of our work, and we focus a lot on universal basic income, where income is the biggest barrier to food security, and that's sort of how we go about things as an organization. We have a lot of different projects going on at the moment. We have our main project right now that's on the west coast of the island, is our Western NL Food Hub, which is what I'll kind of connect the most to what we're talking about today. But that's an online farmers market. So in the Western region, we often have some challenges with having regular style farmers markets, mainly because all of our producers are normally so far away from each other, and at the small scale level often have other full-time jobs that they do throughout the week, meaning that on Saturdays is the only time that they can often produce food. That's normally the time that people would want to go to a farmer's market. And so we try and mitigate those challenges and help people meet in the middle by running this online system where producers can post anything that they have available. They get to choose whatever it is weekly. Over the weekend on a Friday to a Monday, all of our customers from any part of our region can go online and put in an order. So we have a lot of different products that we have available. All of them are local to our region. So within 2.5 hours of Corner Brook, where our main hub is located, all of our products come. So we have eggs, we have cheese, we have lamb, chicken, beef, pork. We have seafoods as well that are coming. They can come from not just in this region, but also we have some coming from Labrador as well, all from the island. Eggs, greens, stored fruits and vegetables. We have rhubarb right now. Transplants are coming from one producer, and we're just trying to make it as easily accessible as possible to get local food. We also have partnerships with other farmers markets that are trying to grow in the area who have the challenges of transportation, and we're trying to help them get some of the food from the producers that we've built those relationships with, to get that food into even more regions, which has been an amazing opportunity. So a lot of the things that we focus on through the Food Hub is we are minimizing food waste, specifically by making sure that the only food that comes through our doors is things that's already been purchased. So we don't hold on to things. We make sure that we have no food waste that's coming out of our space. It also allows all of the food that's still in the ground at our producers to stay fresh longer. So there's a longer lifespan on a lot of the foods, not just for the producers to be able to sell to more people, but also for individuals who might be buying that food. Fresh local food will last longer in your fridge. Another thing that we focus on is climate mitigation. So we are doing all of our own transportation through our electric vehicle. So we have an electric van that we travel across the west coast of the island with, collecting all of the food, bringing it back to our location. And then after everything has been packed, we bring it back to our pickup locations, which are around across the region. Right now we have locations in Black Duck Siding outside of Stephenville, Corner Brook, Pasadena. We're looking for a location in Deer Lake, and Wiltondale are our locations right now. We're also hoping to start in Grand Falls, Windsor soon. So we're growing continuously and always looking for more partners. Yeah, we're always trying to focus on how do we connect people with food and how do we do it in the most local way. And in terms of making food available and affordable for all people in terms of locality, the thing we've focused on is by supporting the people that are trying to make food work here. That is the best way that we can make it accessible and affordable. The more people that are using these systems, the more affordable that things can become, especially once we're able to streamline the distribution and transportation of these foods. So a lot of that is what we do, and we're still very new to sort of a lot of the traceability conversations and things like that, but we are so small scale still where we're face to face with all of our producers. So with our fishers, we know where things are coming from because we've talked to the person that took it out of the ocean. And with our farmers, I have been to these fields and can see where it's all coming from. And so you can know where this food is coming from, and that's a huge part of what we're trying to do as well. So as an organization, that's only such a small part of what we do, but I also don't want to take up any more time just so that we have lots of time for questions, because this has been a great panel. So thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much, Sam. And I just want to reiterate what you said, that this is exactly a great panel. We're very fortunate for the lineup and all of you for taking your time and being interested in speaking today. I will now open up the floor for any questions that anyone might have, whether from our regular attendees or any of our panelists to others as well on the panel. So please feel free to speak up or raise your hand, pop some questions in the chat. I'll leave a few minutes to see if anyone can formulate some questions. And then if not, I do have a few questions myself. Or how about I start with one of those questions and we'll give people time to formulate any if they have. Okay, so I do have a question for anyone that can see to answer this. So what role can government play in promoting sustainable fishing practices and improving access to seafood?
I'll just say a few words, just reiterating. We feel the government can play a very strong role in just improving our supply chains through traceability and labeling, just to help bring the information to people, but also so that the government and the industry knows what's coming and going. That's one of the ways that I think our federal government can have a really big impact in not necessarily directly promoting sustainable fishing or agriculture, but at least knowing what is coming in and out, so that we can then take the next step to say, is it sustainable or not? And then the other thing that I wanted to quickly mention, and perhaps Myra might be able to expand on in a bit as well, but something that we've seen with our Kelp Curious project and actually getting the licensing to have an actual seaweed farm is that it was a very, very slow process through the province of Nova Scotia. Very onerous, a lot of paperwork, took forever. And so one of the things that we'd really like to see the province of Nova Scotia specifically, but I'm sure other provinces as well, is to make those regulations for new entrants into the industry to be not necessarily not as like just not as onerous and as tough for a method of production that is relatively sustainable. If you look at it now, the amount of work that you have to go through to have a license for like an open net salmon farm is the same as a small scale seaweed farm. So we feel there should be some differentiation between how those licenses are getting to fruition and being accepted. So that's one thing I'll plug, and if any others have other thoughts, please expand.
Yeah, I mean, good point. It's the same in Newfoundland. We have basically been trying for 2 years to get a commercial license. And because it's a new process, there's a lot of like figuring it out as we go on both ends, right? And I'd say it can be almost prohibitive how much we had to kind of push for things to happen, I guess. Just because there can be some kind of understandably reticence of trying new things in the aquaculture sphere because there have been some very terrible things happen. And so I think everyone wants to be really sure that nothing will go wrong. What I would add to the regulations as well is, you know, similar to with land agriculture, we're now seeing that monocultures are kind of destructive. And so there's this idea of in aquaculture having multiple species to have not only better yields on the farm, but just healthier ocean. But that's not allowed as of right now. And so we would also love for government to be able to work with us. And in Newfoundland, they started to have the multi-trophic species research grant, which we're under, to try and see, okay, well, if we grow mussels with the seaweed, or if we put seaweed around salmon farms, does that increase the water quality? And a lot of literature seems to point to yes. So yes, investing in helping small scale groups kind of push this kind of budding industry forward, I think will be really, really helpful in getting it going.
Does anyone else have anything to add on to that question? No, all good. Okay, I still have not received any questions just yet, so I'll move on to the other one. How can we ensure equitable access to sustainably sourced seafood for all communities, regardless of socioeconomic status or geographic location? I think Sam spoke a little to this, but I'm not sure if you can elaborate more, if anyone has any other input to this as well.
I can start us off on this question, just because that is one of the main things that we really focus on is just that accessibility of these local foods. It doesn't just have to be something that is valued to such a high point that it's unavailable to most people in our communities. And the biggest thing that we've found is focusing on the smallest scale versions of things. So being able to transport things ourselves, distribute ourselves, build relationships within community has been the best way to sort of make these things accessible. For such a long time, how most people got their fish and things like that was knowing somebody next door. And that still seems to be a huge part of relationships, specifically in Newfoundland and Labrador. And where our cultures continue to change, we're trying to sort of be a low barrier connector for people who have additional food, specifically with seafoods and things like that, and be able to make it as easy as possible for people to get those things. So I think there's a really important space for organizations such as us, and there is always space within transportation distribution for more people to be doing this. I think it's also really important to be looking at it from a social enterprise and cooperative model. These models help support more and more people, and I think that's a really important aspect of what we're doing, and looking at it from not just the sort of person lens, but also from the climactic lens, makes a big impact on making things work for as many people as possible.
Yeah, and sorry if I can add, I might take us a little bit off topic, but I think it's really interesting when we start to talk about like access to sustainable seafood, like from our perspective, and this is where we're kind of prohibitive, is like, well, if there isn't an assessment for a certain product, we can't tell our business partners that it's sustainable or ocean wise or whatever, right? So we've run into this issue a couple of times where we're telling people to source shrimp maybe that's coming halfway across the globe because the local product that is coming out of these communities isn't assessed by us. And so that's where we're starting to turn our attention to make sure that, you know, we have a broader scope of local, like hyper local, really small scale options for any of these fisheries that want to expand or want to have sort of that growth in their business and access not just local markets, but even just regional markets, or want to sell their product at the local Sobeys instead of just, you know, to their regular buyers. So that's something that we're focusing on, where it's that I'm touching on this and not like the equitable access even for like consumers to have, but like for the fisheries to make sure that any premiums that are being received by like their producers or the grocery stores are actually trickling down into the community and at the fishery level themselves. It's something where the data is missing currently, and that's a big focus of our program moving forward, is just trying to drive like local initiatives to tell us what is sustainable to them, like whether it be through their livelihoods or through like any sort of mitigation that they're doing to ensure there's zero bycatch. Like it doesn't have to fit one size fits all for the fisheries everywhere. We need to kind of tailor the standard to make sure that it makes sense for every community. So that's just my 2 cents on that front.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think, you know, I've come at it, you know, having a lot of experience with farming more than with fishing. Coming from Michigan, obviously pretty landlocked. And what you often find when you have accessibility issues in places where maybe like in the realm of produce, if you can't access fresh broccoli, a lot of times you have small grassroots organizations coming in and actually starting farming initiatives and making produce somewhat more accessible. Obviously, it's really hard to scale that on like a sort of national level. And the thing that is the thinking about this question that really sort of, I don't really know how to wrap my brain around is this. It's so much easier to grow a carrot than it is to like get a salmon to Saskatchewan, you know? And so it's one of the things we're working on here, and it's like in its infancy, is this idea of like a tin fish. And trying to figure out, I mean, because one of the big problems with getting fish to landlocked places is just the amount of fuel, right? It has to go by airplane or by truck. So we're just wondering, like, you know, the things that we're starting to research is if we're able to find products that can be sustainably captured here in the ocean and can be, you know, packaged in a way that has a much longer shelf life and can be transported by multiple pallets. Is that an option for getting, obviously it doesn't solve the problem of getting someone a fresh fish, but it might help to mitigate being able to get fish to those communities in general by just thinking about how we're packaging that product. But these are all just at this point, and as it relates to Shorefast, these are thoughts that we're, you know, going to start to begin to work on in the coming year. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just say one last thought on that. I love tin fish. I think it should be more commonly consumed, but I'm just thinking about this question of like, oftentimes it's really hard to have reasonably priced, cheaper, whatever you want to call it, seafood and have it be sustainable at the same time. It's a really tough challenge. And one of the things that I hope to see a little bit more is like the models and the way that the supply chain works is because oftentimes there's more pressure on producers to be more sustainable, so they have to put in more resources, more costs, and that kind of trickles down the supply chain. And so one of the things that we do with our Seafood Progress is to actually get like the retailers, the big companies, to support directly the producers. So they're kind of absorbing the cost and then not putting it so much on the consumer. It's a certain model that can be applied in different ways, but it's one that I find at least there's a bit of hope in terms of bringing seafood that's accessible and cheaper, not crazy high priced, to people anywhere in Canada. So I'll leave it off at that point.
Thank you so much to all of you for that. You pretty much answered most of the other questions that I had here anyways, which is lovely. I'm taking a note of the time right now and realize that we have just about maxed out our time that was allotted for this. So I would like to tell you all thank you so much to our panelists and for our attendees that have come and gone. And I hope at the end of today that we did learn something from the wealth of knowledge that you all provided today. So without further ado, please enjoy the rest of the day and happy World Oceans Week. Thank you so much, everyone, for this. I will be following up with you all with the recording. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was
Bye.
lovely.